My wife's best friend had always been jealous of us. One night, she cornered me and whispered, "Kiss me, or I'll tell her you tried to." I laughed, until my wife came home the next day, screaming, "How could you?" She believed her. Desperate to prove my innocence, I set up a hidden camera the next time her friend came over. When the footage played, my wife collapsed in tears. But the truth hurt more than the lie ever did. My wife, Sophie, and I had been married for 8 years. We met in college, fell in love fast, and built a life together in Boston. We had inside jokes, favorite TV shows, a little apartment that was messy but comfortable. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Sophie's best friend, Olivia, had been part of the picture long before I came along. She was always there, at birthdays, holidays, weekend hangouts. At first, I thought she was just protective of Sophie. But over time, I started to notice things. She was always watching. Not just watching, studying. Whenever Sophie complimented me, Olivia had something negative to add. If Sophie kissed me in front of her, Olivia would roll her eyes or change the subject. If we had good news, she would find a way to undercut it. I shrugged it off. I told myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. Sophie had a work trip coming up, and Olivia suggested keeping me company. I should have said no. I should have trusted my gut. But Olivia had been Sophie's best friend for over a decade, how could I say no without making it weird? She came over that night with a bottle of wine. I wasn't drinking. She poured herself a glass, curled up on the couch, and we watched some show she picked. It wasn't awkward, not at first. Then, out of nowhere, Olivia put her glass down and turned to me. "Daniel," she said, too softly. "Can I ask you something?" I muted the TV. "What's up?" She hesitated, biting her lip like she was struggling with something. Then she leaned in, too close. "Kiss me." I blinked. "What?" She tilted her head, smiling. "Kiss me." I actually laughed. "Olivia, what, if you don't," she whispered, "I'll tell Sophie you tried to." It took me a second to process what she was saying. I kept waiting for the punchline. The joke. But Olivia wasn't laughing. I stood up so fast that the couch shifted. "That's not funny." She leaned back like I was the one acting crazy. "I'm not joking." I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "You need to leave." She sighed, grabbed her purse, and strolled to the door like she hadn't just tried to destroy my life. But right before she walked out, she turned back. "Let's see what Sophie thinks," she said, smirking. Then she was gone. I barely slept. I told myself Olivia was bluffing. That she wouldn't actually go through with it. But the next evening, Sophie came home early. She slammed the front door so hard the walls shook. "How could you?" she shouted. I froze. My worst nightmare was standing in front of me, playing out in real time. "Sophie, what?" Olivia told me everything. Her voice cracked. How you tried to kiss her. How she pushed you away. How you begged her not to tell me. I felt sick. That's a lie. She wouldn't lie about something like this. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't just hurt. She was convinced. It didn't matter what I said. Olivia had gotten to her first. "Sophie, please," I begged. "You know me. I would never." She told me how you were acting weird all night. How you kept looking at her. How she felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to leave. I couldn't breathe. That never happened. She cried when she told me. Sophie's voice was shaking. Why would she fake something like this? I felt like the walls were closing in. Because she wants to break us up. Sophie let out a hollow laugh, like I had just said the dumbest thing in the world. Why would she do that? I wanted to scream. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, because she's always been jealous of you. Of us. Sophie just shook her head. She wasn't listening. She wasn't hearing me. She grabbed a bag and started throwing clothes into it. "Sophie, don't do this." My voice cracked. "Please." She zipped the bag and slung it over her shoulder. "I just need time to think." And then she left. I sat in that empty apartment for hours, replaying everything in my head. I couldn't let this happen. I had to prove the truth. The next morning, I bought a hidden camera. A small, motion-activated one that I placed on the bookshelf. If Olivia came back, I would have proof. 2 days later, she did. She let herself in like she owned the place. I stayed seated, watching her. "How are you holding up?" she asked sweetly. I didn't answer. She sighed and sat down across from me. "Daniel, I think we need to talk." I clenched my jaw. "About what?" She gave me a smile that made my skin crawl. "About us." "There is no us." She shrugged. "There could be." I wanted to throw something. Instead, I stayed still. "You really think I'd ever?" She cut me off. "Oh, Daniel. You don't have much of a choice, do you?" I said nothing. She leaned forward. "Sophie believes me. She's not coming back. But if you and I were together, maybe I could help fix things. Maybe I could convince her that she misunderstood." I forced myself to stay calm. "You're disgusting." She laughed. "Call me whatever you want. You're the one who lost his wife." I stood up. "Get out." She sighed like I was being dramatic, then stood. "Suit yourself." Then she left. The moment the door shut, I rushed to the camera. I watched the footage 3 times, making sure it caught everything. Her voice. Her face. Her exact words. And then I sent it to Sophie. I waited. Hours passed. Then my phone rang. I answered so fast I nearly dropped it. Sophie, she was crying. I felt a wave of relief. She had seen the truth. She understood. She was sorry. But then she spoke. I believed her because I wanted to. It was like being punched in the stomach. "What?" My voice was barely a whisper. She sniffled. "Danny. I had doubts before. About us. Olivia she gave me an excuse. I didn't know what to say. She could have trusted me. She could have chosen to believe me. But she didn't. And now, even with the truth laid out in front of her, none of it mattered. Because Sophie had already made her choice. I stood there, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. She believed Olivia because she wanted to. Those words hit me harder than anything Olivia had done. I could have handled a misunderstanding, even betrayal, but this? This meant Sophie had been looking for a reason to doubt me. Olivia hadn't just planted the lie, Sophie had watered it, nurtured it, let it grow. I swallowed hard. "So, what now?" Silence. Then Sophie let out a shaky breath. "I don't know. I should have been angry. Maybe I was. But more than anything, I felt empty." She didn't know. After everything, after hearing Olivia admit the truth, after seeing it with her own eyes, she didn't know. "You need time to think," I said flatly. It wasn't a question. Another pause. "Yeah." I let out a humorless laugh. "Take all the time you want, Sophie." Then I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling like I was in someone else's life. Like I had woken up in a reality that wasn't mine. Sophie wasn't coming back. Even if she did, how could I ever trust her again? I should have seen this coming. I should have known. But I didn't. And that made me hate myself a little. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely ate, barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the conversation. The moment she admitted the truth. The moment I realized I had already lost her. Then, on the 4th day, something happened that shook me out of my haze. A text. From Olivia. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. She had some nerve. I should have ignored it. But instead, I typed back, "About what?" She responded immediately. "Meet me at the Lantern Cafe. 1 hour." I didn't owe her anything. I should have blocked her, deleted the message, walked away. But a part of me needed to know. Needed to hear whatever twisted reason she had for what she did. So I went. The Lantern Cafe was a small, quiet place a few blocks from my apartment. Sophie and I used to come here on weekends. It felt wrong to be there now, waiting for Olivia. She walked in right on time, dressed too nicely for a casual meetup. A flowy beige dress, hair done, makeup perfect. Like she was meeting a date. Disgust crawled up my spine. She smiled like nothing had happened. "Hey, Daniel." I didn't return it. "Why am I here?" She sighed, sitting across from me. "Look, I know you're mad. I clenched my jaw. You ruined my marriage. She tilted her head, like she found that amusing. Did I? I narrowed my eyes. What's that supposed to mean? She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. If I really ruined it, then why didn't Sophie come running back the second you showed her the footage? My stomach twisted. Olivia smiled. Think about it, Daniel. She didn't trust you. Maybe she never really did. I hated that she was right. She reached for her coffee, taking a slow sip. You keep blaming me, but I didn't force Sophie to leave. I wanted to argue. To yell. But the words stuck in my throat. Olivia's voice softened. You deserve better. I let out a bitter laugh. And what? You think that's you? She shrugged. I think we'd make sense. I clenched my fists under the table. You're insane. She smiled again, unbothered. Or maybe I just see things clearly. I pushed back my chair, ready to leave. Then she dropped the bomb. I'm pregnant. I froze. My heart stopped. She let the word settle before adding, and it's yours. I stared at her, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. That's not possible. She gave me a knowing look. Are you sure about that? Pure, burning rage surged through me. We never, she cut me off with a smirk. Didn't we? I opened my mouth, then shut it. Because suddenly, something terrifying occurred to me. That night, the night she set me up, what if she did something while I was asleep? I felt sick. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Now, you can fight me on this, but think about what that'll look like. Sophie already doesn't trust you. How do you think she'll react when I tell her I'm carrying your baby? I gripped the edge of the table. You're lying. She shrugged. Guess we'll find out soon enough. I couldn't breathe. I had walked into this cafe thinking Olivia had already done her worst. I was wrong. She was just getting started. My pulse pounded in my ears. The cafe, the people, the clinking of cups, it all faded into the background. All I could focus on was Olivia's smirk, the way she was watching me like she had already won. You're lying, I said again, but my voice was unsteady. She just tilted her head. Maybe. Maybe not. But you don't sound so sure anymore, do you? I swallowed hard. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. There was no way she was pregnant with my child. That was impossible. But she had set me up before. What if she had done something else that night? What if she had slipped something in my drink? No. No, that wasn't possible. I would remember. Wouldn't I? She reached into her purse and pulled out a small white envelope, sliding it across the table. Take a look. I hesitated, then snatched it up, tearing it open. Inside was a sonogram. A real one. My stomach twisted. This doesn't mean anything, I muttered, shoving it back toward her. She leaned back, crossing her arms. It will to Sophie. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about me believing her. This was about Sophie. Olivia didn't need me to think it was true, she just needed Sophie to doubt. And Sophie would. I forced myself to take slow breaths. Why are you doing this? Olivia took another sip of her coffee, looking annoyingly calm. Because I can. The sheer audacity of it made my hands shake. She leaned in again. And because I told you before, Sophie was never really yours. I gritted my teeth. You're sick. She just smiled, like I had complimented her. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Stay away from me. Olivia just tilted her head. I don't think that's going to be up to you. I stormed out of the cafe, shoving the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. My head was spinning. I needed air. I needed to think. But I didn't get the chance. The second I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from Sophie. We need to talk. Now. I stared at the screen, feeling a new kind of dread settle in. Had Olivia already told her? I called Sophie immediately. She answered on the first ring. Her breathing was uneven. Is it true? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shut my eyes. She's lying, I said firmly. Silence. Then, softly, I don't know what to believe anymore. My chest tightened. Sophie, I have proof she lied about the first time. Why would she suddenly be telling the truth now? She let out a shaky breath. Because this time, there's a baby. That doesn't mean it's mine. She hesitated. What if it is? I nearly threw my phone across the street. Are you serious right now? My voice came out harsher than I intended. You just saw evidence that Olivia made up the first lie, and now, because she waves a sonogram in your face, you're questioning me again. She sniffled. I don't know what to think. I clenched my jaw. Did you sleep with someone else? That made her go quiet. My breath caught. Sophie. More silence. Then, barely audible, I don't know. Something inside me cracked. You don't know, I repeated, my voice hollow. She started crying. I was drunk. It was that weekend I went out with Olivia, and she kept pushing me to drink more than I usually do. I don't remember everything, but I woke up in a hotel room alone. My clothes were on, but my head was pounding, and I felt sick. Olivia said I was just too drunk to remember getting back to the hotel, that I passed out the second we got there. I felt lightheaded. Why didn't you tell me? My voice was shaking. I was scared, she admitted. I wanted to believe nothing happened. I convinced myself it didn't. But now I don't know. My blood turned ice cold. Olivia was with you that night? I asked slowly. She sniffled. Yeah, she was the one who helped me back to the room. My whole body went rigid. A realization slammed into me so hard I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't about me. Olivia had been after Sophie this entire time. What if she had set her up, too? The pieces clicked together so fast it made my head spin. Olivia had been pushing Sophie to drink. She made sure she got too drunk to remember anything. She was the one who told Sophie what had happened that night. And now, conveniently, she was claiming she was pregnant. My breath came out shaky. Sophie, listen to me. Olivia might have done something to you that night. She wanted to separate us. What if she wanted to make sure you doubted yourself, too? Sophie let out a shaky exhale. But what if she didn't? I wanted to scream. What if she did? I shot back. What if this whole thing was just another one of her manipulations? More silence. Then she whispered, what do we do? The weight of everything crashed down on me. I didn't have an answer. My grip tightened on my phone as Sophie's shaky breathing echoed in my ear. What do we do? Her words hung between us, heavy and fragile. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for her too. I didn't have all the answers. But I knew one thing for sure, Olivia had orchestrated everything, and it was time to end this. I took a deep breath. We get the truth. I told Sophie to meet me at Olivia's apartment. She hesitated. What if she refuses to talk? I exhaled sharply. She won't. Not when she thinks she's won. I could hear her swallow. Okay. It was the first time in weeks we were on the same side. I left immediately, heart pounding the entire drive. When I pulled up, Sophie was already there, standing by her car, arms wrapped around herself. She looked at me, eyes filled with uncertainty. What if I don't want to know? I searched her face. You do, I said softly. She took a deep breath, nodding. We climbed the steps together, and before we could knock, the door swung open. Olivia stood there, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. Well, this is unexpected. I pushed past her without asking. Sophie followed, her footsteps hesitant. Olivia shut the door behind us, crossing her arms. To what do I owe the pleasure? I turned to face her. Enough. No more games. No more lies. She laughed lightly. Daniel, this is getting exhausting. Shut up, Sophie snapped. Olivia's expression flickered, just for a second, but she recovered quickly, tilting her head. Oh. Did you finally grow a spine, Sophie? Sophie clenched her fists. Just tell me the truth. That night, what really happened? Olivia sighed dramatically. I already told you. You got too drunk, I took care of you, and you barely made it to your hotel room before passing out. What part of that is so hard to understand? I watched her carefully. Her words were too smooth. Rehearsed. Sophie looked at me, and I could tell she wanted to believe it. But then I spoke. Then why were you the last person seen leaving that room? Her head snapped toward me. I pulled out my phone and played the video I had found just hours ago. The hotel security footage. A woman, Olivia. Leaving the room at 3 a.m., alone. Not a single sign of Sophie. No one else entered or exited until the next morning. Sophie let out a shaky breath. "You," Olivia's face darkened, but she forced a smile. "Daniel, where did you get that?" "Doesn't matter," I shot back. "What matters is that you lied. Again." Sophie looked at her, horrified. "What did you do to me?" Olivia rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, did you drug me?" Sophie's voice cracked. Olivia hesitated, and in that split second, we had our answer. Sophie took a step back like she had been physically struck. "Oh my God." Olivia's jaw tightened. "Nothing happened, Sophie. I just needed you to think something did." Sophie's breathing grew uneven. "Why? Why would you do that to me?" Olivia's face twisted into something ugly. "Because you never deserved him." The words exploded out of her, raw and venomous. "You had everything. A perfect life, a husband who adored you, and you didn't even appreciate it. You always had one foot out the door, always questioning, always doubting. And Daniel? He was the perfect guy. Loyal, kind, everything I ever wanted. But he wasted it on you." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "So you, what? You destroyed our marriage just because you were jealous?" Olivia scoffed. "No, Sophie. I destroyed it because I could. Because deep down, you already didn't trust him. You just needed a little push." The room went silent. Sophie stared at Olivia, face pale, lips trembling. I turned to Olivia, my voice low and sharp. "And the baby?" Olivia smiled, but it was strained now. "You'll just have to wait and see, won't you?" I shook my head. "You were never pregnant, were you?" She stared at me. Then, slowly, her lips curled into a smirk. I had my answer. Sophie let out a choked breath, backing away from Olivia like she was something rotten. "You're a monster," she whispered. Olivia shrugged. "And yet, I still won." I clenched my fists, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I turned to Sophie. "Let's go." She didn't move. Her eyes were locked on Olivia, and for the first time since this entire nightmare started, I saw something shift in her. "Understanding." She whispered, "You never wanted me to be happy." Olivia didn't respond. And in that moment, Sophie finally saw the truth. She turned to me, eyes filled with something raw. "Daniel. I am so sorry." My throat tightened. I wanted to say something, anything, but I just nodded. Because it didn't matter anymore. We walked out of Olivia's apartment together, leaving her standing there, victorious in nothing. Sophie and I didn't get back together. She apologized. A lot. But the damage was done. I forgave her, eventually. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to. She moved away a few months later. We still talk, sometimes, but it's different now. It always will be. As for Olivia, she disappeared from both of our lives. I heard through mutual friends that she moved to another city, but I didn't care enough to find out more. I spent a long time trying to make sense of everything. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that I had been so blind. But in the end, I realized something simple. Some people don't need a reason to ruin your life. They just need the opportunity.